You are listening to the Dental Business Mastery Podcast, where you discover management insights and strategies for your successful dental practice. There are also interviews with key people in the industry who have advice and services to help you and your team achieve great success. Welcome to this episode of the Dental Business Mastery Podcast. I am Julie Parker, one of the co-founders of Dental Business Mastery and one of the hosts of this podcast. And I am delighted, absolutely delighted, to welcome my next guest. And you are Mike Collishaw from 32 Bite, and that's B-Y-T-E, 32 Bite. Welcome, first of all, Mike, and then I'll tell people why you're here.
Thanks, Julie.
Now, Mike, you and I met a number of months ago at an evening event with a whole bunch of people that we're meeting up again in March, because this particular event was such a terrific event, which we'll tell everybody about, that we thought, hey, let's put on our own event just like that. And what that event was, it was for people who were building their own health-related clinic, whether it be medical or physio or whatever the thing is. And the fantastic Mindy Green from Smart Dental Setup invited me along. And one of the co-creators of this event was Jason Carroll of Caliber Interior Design, Interior Fit Out, Caliber anyway. And it was such a terrific format with all these experts there in front of the huge audience that we had, giving everybody a chance to ask questions and have all of these questions answered before they go down the path of tackling their own dental practice setup, which can be an enormous project. And I can't even imagine doing it. I had my own practice, but I did not start it from scratch. I bought something that was already humming along for decades and decades, and I can't believe how lucky I was with that. But our event, Mike, is going to be all focused around dentists.
Yeah, well, I'm excited for it because I just love talking about this stuff. I love, people setting up new practices and everything that goes into it. Because we're really often, we get involved very, very early in the journey. And it's actually how I met Jason and the team from Caliber. Was we were doing a practice that they were doing a fit out for. And we ended up becoming their IT company based off what had happened throughout that process. And now we work really, really closely with them. And obviously there's events and other things that happen there. But I actually really love getting into it super early with somebody who's never done this before. We've done, I'd say, well over 100 new practice fit outs now.
Wowee, that's a lot. That's a lot.
And it's, we've got a staff member on full time now who basically just does new practices. And he's currently booked up until July, and it's the 23rd of February. So it's very busy. So if somebody comes to me and says, I'm opening a practice in a month, I'm going to have to do it myself because I can't. The guy that I've got, he's booked, and that all comes off the back of these partners we have like Caliber, who are just great, proponents for the work that we do. But what it really gives us when we get in so early with a practice, and I imagine with a lot of other people as well, is we get to kind of see the project as it evolves from thought to process to concept to actual deliverance. And I feel like when we're involved that early, we've got so many things that we can kind of guide people towards because they miss so much of it when they're going through the process that, if you can have really informed partners very early on, it makes the whole journey a lot easier. And I would typically take, with a practice over a 6-month window of them building a practice, I could take 20 phone calls with that practice owner. And I'd say probably 10 of them have absolutely nothing to do with IT. They're to do with the accountancy, they're to do with the fit out, they're to do with equipment, they're to do with just transitioning from being a dentist to a business owner. And I think that's one thing that, a lot of owners really take for granted is they think, I could just transition from working at the chair to working in the office. And it's so much more of a transition than most people think about. And so a lot of what I do in the part is really just an advisory piece of helping them get ready to open a practice rather than the technical parts of it. And I just love that. I love being a part of the whole process and understanding the whole thing. And yeah, I love doing it. I really enjoy it. So it's great for me.
And really getting that group of experts in your corner from the very start is just so extraordinarily important because everything becomes overwhelming. So first of all, with 32 Byte, what services do you offer?
So we're sort of all over the place in terms of the technical space. But the way I like to consider it is if you have a device that is connected to the network or the internet in your practice, we can help you get it installed, we can help you support it, and we can help you with it on an ongoing basis. So we do from conception, we do practice hardware, fit out, servers, networking, Wi-Fi, all that kind of stuff, and all the planning that goes into that as well through the process, as well as ongoing support, maintenance, internet connections, phone services, basically the whole kind of package of everything you'd think, oh, I've got Telstra for this, and I've got the IT company for this, and I've got this company for this, and we just do all of that in one spot. And the real goal for me is when a practice has an issue with something, every practice is going to have issues, right? If they didn't, I wouldn't have a job. So here we are. But when they have an issue with a thing, it's, some of them will go, oh, okay, well, it's Outlook, I'll call the IT company. Or it's Dental for Windows, I'll call Centaur. Or it's HiCaps, I'll call HiCaps. Yeah. And I go to them, no, you just ring us and we just do all of it. If the X-ray is not taking images, you call us. And if we need to involve Dentsply or Henry Schein or whoever it is, we can get them involved. But 9 times out of 10, we can resolve the issue on the spot and they don't need to contact that third-party vendor.
I tell you what, it's incredible. It's so incredible. I mean, for someone who is, when I first started dental assisting, there were no computers, there were cards and the rip out receipts at the front desk with the big metal base on it. So, and then as it evolves, I've worked in practices where it does feel like you've got the hub of the operations, and as time went on along and more technology came about, we just start plugging in plugs into this main hub, and nothing's really coming from a space where there was a proper concept at the start. We just kind of kept making do. And it's interesting how much I'm in that same mindset. Like if I'm in a practice and something goes wrong, the first thing I do is try to get in there myself and try to figure out what to do. And you can, all of these things, your dental software, your imaging, your emails, your telephone lines, your HiCaps machines, it is everything. Everything is now dependent on people like you. And to be able to have somebody that has actually, from an expert vision, set everything up or can reconfigure everything so it's all set up in such a way that it works and flows beautifully. This is one of your most important team members here we're talking about.
Yeah, and I view it that way as well. And the guys that we have in our team, they know all of the clients. Like they know the people that they work with and they have good relationships with people. And there's always going to be stress on the phone. Like one of the things I'll say to my team is when they first start, nobody's ever going to call you and ask, are you having a good day? Like that's just not the phone call you're going to get. It's going to be, HiCaps isn't working, I can't take a payment. That's
and the patient's right in front of me.
Yeah. And I think it's a really hard transition because most people view IT as this big bubble. And it's like, oh, you do IT, right? So you can build websites and you can hack into things. You can do, and that's just not the case. IT is so much like dentistry in so many aspects of it, is that we have specialists and we have hygienists and we have general dentists and we've got office managers and we've got all these people that translate into people that I have in my business. And there are people in there who I go, okay, it's a specific issue with an orthophos, Dentsply, Sirona, CBCT. That's Ben. I'm going to go get Ben because Ben knows that. Like it's either me or Ben at that point. And there's everyone else will be like, see them. But we've got these kind of subject matter experts. So each kind of main thing that we look after for each product, for each service, for each type of thing is we have a subject matter expert and then a secondary expert. And really that subject matter expert is our go-to. If there's really an elevated issue with that, with HiCaps, with Dentsply, with Henry Schein, with D4W, whatever it is, you would go to that subject matter expert. They would have the answer for you or they would be able to show you. And that's how we sort of filter the information down into our team. But that's specialists. Ben has been with my team for 10 years next month. He's done a lot of hard yards to earn this. And when we first got into the space, you could kind of, like any IT company could really do dental practices because there just wasn't that much complexity in there. It was weird and it was a little bit broken. It was different to other industries, but not to the level it is now. It is now at a point that we don't have many clients outside of the dental space anymore. But a number of years ago, we sort of filtered off a lot of the people, and that's when we rebranded to 32 Byte and went, right, now we are for dentists.
It's
We
such
want
a
to be
beautiful name.
yeah,
The double meaning of bite. I love it.
we can thank Dr. Tiv for that, because he ran a poll in one of the DPO groups probably about 5 years ago and got everyone to test it, and 32BITE came back as the biggest response. And I was like, yeah, but we're still nerds, so there's a why. So, I go through all that and I go, there used to be this kind of everyone could do it because it wasn't that hard. And you think sort of in the change in dentistry over the last decade is 10 years ago, there was technology, but it wasn't super advanced. Like everyone was on D4W or Oasis, basically. Exact was sort of starting to come out, but they were the two practice management softwares. It wasn't really cloud. Practica was around, but it wasn't really there. Core Practice was just about to launch. And like in terms of practice management, that was it. And it wasn't common for a practice to have an OPG and a CBCT. And intraoral scanning in 3D just wasn't really there. Like, some of the early Trios ones were there. And, there were a couple of other ones that people still carry bad habits with the flick of their wrist for, but we won't talk about that. I've got a certain prosthodontist who's very upset with me because I grabbed his hand and showed him how to do the scan so it had stopped breaking the alignment. And there's nothing like doing 30 years of dentistry to have someone like me come in and tell you how to do your job. So, but, what happened is there was this sort of transition over 10 years to 5 years ago where it went from being not super technologically focused into being quite complex. And then the last 5 years, that has just accelerated at, this kind of exponential rate where there used to be, if I go back 10 years, there were probably 15 to 20 internet connected devices in a practice. Now the average new practice we open, we have to put in a 48 port switch because there is that many devices in there.
Wow.
And we're going, so we've gone from really 10 to sort of 40 to 50, and that's in a 2 to 3 chair practice. Now, some of the ones that we look after where we've got some of the larger practices, we do probably 15 odd chairs in a practice. Mm-hmm. And we would have somewhere in the realm of 300 to 500 connected devices. And
because that's something else that's changed over time too, is the sheer number of practices, the surgeries in a practice.
Yeah. And, it was really common. It used to, and again, roll back 10 years, is that a 3-4 chair practice that's normal. A lot of them were still just one chair. And it was one dentist who worked out of one site, and that was his whole business, and that was how he ran forever. And 40, 50 years later, he'd sell it to somebody else, they'd buy it, and they'd run one chair. And that's the way that dentistry ran for 150 years. And a lot of the technology that lives in dentistry is still that kind of 100, 150-year-old. It's just slowly adapted. But the digital space and digital technology in the dental world has just gone astronomically different. And if you want a really great example of that, look at Straumann as a company. Mm-hmm. If you were a practicing dentist 20 years ago and you heard the word Straumann, you would say implant. That was it.
I'm thinking.
and that's exactly it, right? And that's where everyone put them. And now I look at it and I go, we work really closely with Straumann all across Australia, and they're a great partner of ours. But what they do now is so different. And the reason that they got us involved was all of a sudden they were getting all these phone calls, and it's like, we've got Trios ones that just aren't connecting to the networks properly, and they're disconnecting in these spaces. And the same thing happens across all vendors. It's, the Dentsply Sirona, the Prime scans, they have the same thing. They've got to have an independent network set up for CEREC and Prime Scan. And there's all of these different technologies now that have come out that are super complex. And the way that they need to connect into a network is fundamentally different to how these things used to work. And so we find now that, we bring in somebody who's 10 years experience on an IT service desk somewhere, and they walk in and I go, right, we're going to treat it like you've never worked in IT. Because that is how different it is working for a dental practice.
Yeah. Yeah. It is just bringing home that message for me that with this event coming up in March, and it is focused for brand new dental practice owners who are going to be building from scratch, their ability to be able to get you guys in and understand what kind of needs to be laid down as foundations, because it's just going to get busier in this space. It's just going to get more and more tools for us to be able to use from an IT perspective.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things, when we get in early and someone says to me, "Oh, I'm going to need just to run through what computers we need," and I go, "Okay, I'm going to book a 2-hour meeting with you because this is going to take a while." Because they're not going to consider things like, are they going to use intraoral scanners? If they're going to use an intraoral scanner, what type? Because planning the Wi-Fi locations for that is crucial. If you get that wrong, you'll end up with a dead spot at the head of a chair, and you'll never get scanning in that room. And that's something that you can't get wrong. And it doesn't cost much to get it right at the start, but you've got to do it right at the start. A lot of the time, that they've been put plaster up on the ceiling, and once this is up there, it's very hard to get into the roof of some of these places and run extra cables and this kind of stuff. And so, a lot of what we do as well is around educating fit out companies when they haven't done a lot of this work before, and going, look, you have to involve us early. We have to give you placement of Wi-Fi and cameras and this kind of stuff. Like, we need to tell you where this is going to go before you put the plaster up, because if you don't, it costs the client 5 times more to fix it.
Yeah, because you're trying to, and when we go out to dental practices who are thinking about selling their practice or whatever, one of the first questions we say is, how many surgeries do you have? And they always answer the same way. We have this many surgeries, made 2 or 3 or 4 surgeries, but we're plumbed out for another 2 or plumbed out for another 1. And we go, good planning. That's great. It's good that before you lay the floors down, you get all the plumbing underneath. So if you ever want to use these as surgeries, you've got the option to do it. But you're saying IT plan the same way.
You got to plumb out the IT.
Yeah, plumb out the IT. That's it.
That's 100% it. And I love a good analogy too. Like when I'm talking to people and someone comes to me and they go, "Oh, I've got this stuff in place." And, the guy down the road from me said he can do they had a server put in for $5,000. I go, okay, I ideally push people away from servers wherever possible. But if they're going to do on-premise, dental for Windows or Exact or something like that, then, we've got a different need. And we may need to put in a server. And if we're going to do that, then we have to put in the right device. And, when I go back to somebody and I'm like, yeah, the server's probably going to be about 17 grand. And they're like, oh, but the guy down the road did it for 5. And I go, well, okay, they didn't use a server though. They did stuff that we were doing 15 years ago, which it doesn't keep you safe anymore. It's not the right way to do it. And, it's really hard to sort of put it into perspective for a dentist because they don't understand the technology side of it. And so my typical argument back to them is like, well, I don't use amalgam fills. So, and usually I get a pretty good response from that.
That's good. Analogies are fantastic. Any kind of story that makes it far more relatable when we're talking about a confusing space is absolutely useful. And we talk about this when we're talking to patients about dental treatments, like, liken things back to things that they know about, such as a broken down car or something like that. Because it's just too difficult. We're trying to get somebody to have a whole lot more information in their brain than what they actually do have. And you saying the word safe kind of took my mind straight to, because as I mentioned before, I was looking at your website and the wonderful testimonial by Dr. Gina Tan is on there. And one of the sections that I watched her talk about was, we're talking about patient data files here. So we can't afford just kind of go in there with just a little bit enough information to get by, because if we have data breaches, for example, it's going to come back to, well, did we do everything that we could to make sure that we're being professionally responsible when we're dealing with patient files?
Yeah, and I think one of the things you got to consider here is every dental practice in Australia will get compromised. Right? That's just the reality of where the threat landscape is going in cybersecurity. Every business in the world will get compromised at some point in some form or another if they operate for a long enough time, right? So it's about the message you send afterwards. When I go into a practice and I go, okay, well, we've got Dental for Windows installed on the reception computer, where the database is, where the emails are, which I can't. That is akin to me to, when people say, oh, but we never used to wear seatbelts and we're still alive. Yeah, but there'd probably be more of you alive if you wore seatbelts. There's this kind of process to it.
So I didn't even know that connection. Because when I had my practice, it was on the reception computer. The server was a reception computer. But then again, I'm so old that we didn't use emails back then, so not on a regular basis.
it's in excess of 90% of data breaches or compromises into a business come through email. So they will receive a phishing email, or they'll receive something where they've clicked on a bad link. Now, it might not even be your practice email. Say you've got a receptionist sitting there and then they log into their Hotmail account and then they click a bad link from that. And all it takes is one bad link in there and they've installed a piece of software, remote access tool, and you can basically see or do anything you want on that computer. So if there's an SQL database, which is what D4W runs on, we can just pick up that database, take it away. It's not that big. I can just copy it off the computer. Now I've got all of the patient data that you've ever seen in that practice.
Oh my God.
And that's something that can happen in the space of 5 minutes. And with
You're
a
actually
bad,
making my stomach hurt, I think.
yeah, but it's one single bad click and then nothing else. You won't notice anything else happen.
Yeah.
So, you've got to protect every single device in every single scenario, and you're never ever going to be able to do that, right? So
And keep up with all the ways they're doing it as well.
Well, so we do a lot of training.
Yeah.
So across my team, everyone will be out at least once a month doing some kind of new training. And then all of the things that we tell our clients they should do, we do. So I don't have admin access to my own computer. This thing that I'm talking to you on right now, if I want to install Zoom on this, I've got to go through an approval process in my business. And one of the senior techs has to authorize me being able to install that software. If I want to divert my emails out to an external email, it'll fail. It just won't let me do it. And we would have to get somebody log into a specific portal and then reduce the things. If I was to all of a sudden log in from Germany, my account would get locked. I wouldn't be able to log into my emails anymore until I confirmed with our managed operations team that it was okay for me to do so.
And I imagine all these things, because just over this past weekend, I had to log into a Zoom account from a different device and record a meeting, and it wasn't letting me, and I had to get a code and all the things. And I was just like, I'm over all this over the top security. Like, I'm over it. I just want it all gone. But to you now, of course, it brings it back to why it's so important. And, having staff members log in to their emails and things like that, I mean, it feels kind of anti or against your team culture to say, no, none of you can sign into anything. You have to do it all through your own phones. Don't contaminate our space. It feels all icky and awful. But we really do have to take that level of responsibility over the business itself, because at the end of the day, what we are protecting are the patient's personal files. That has to be the most, and that's the whole reason why we're here, is just to make sure that patients are seen, and patients are seen in a very professional, safe way, not just physically, but for their personal information as well. And I remember speaking with somebody a few years ago, some of the fines that these practices or businesses can be charged when they're not doing the right thing are enough to give you the motivation to do the right thing.
Yeah, I think without playing devil's advocate here, is you won't ever get a fine for getting a compromise. You'll get a fine for not following the procedure post that period. So the way that the OAIC works, which is the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner, they're the ones that deal with what's called notifiable data breaches. A notifiable data breach is basically, for any dental practice, it's if anyone gains access to anything. There are no minimums, no nothing else. For other businesses, it's if you're turning over more than $3 million in revenue and so on and so forth. There's a whole bunch of caveats. As soon as you have health information, those are out the window. Any kind of compromise, if somebody accesses your email, if somebody gets onto one of your computers, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have to treat that as a notifiable data breach. And a notifiable data breach means we have to go to the OAIC, we have to report it to them, we have to then go through a process of, here's what we did, here's how we got compromised, here's how we have sealed that compromise, and this is what we're doing moving forward. And now we have to send a public acknowledgement. So there's 2 parts of that. Number 1 is you have to make a public statement, like Optus and Medibank had to do recently. And then you have to send an email to all of those people. Now, were you part of either of those, the Optus or the Medibank one?
No.
Or AHM?
No.
Okay. So what they had to do, and I used to work at Medibank, so, some of the stuff that they got compromised, it's stuff that they knew was coming.
Okay. I could have done more.
Yeah, and so the difference in sort of communication that you can make at this point is between we, I'm running my own. I've got Julie Parker's Dental, and we did all of these things. We had antivirus in place. We had endpoint detection and response. We did a managed security operations center. We had privileged access management. We had all of these things, and we got compromised anyway. And the way that I view it is, if someone can break into the FBI, they're getting into Julie Parker's Dental, right?
Yeah,
Like that's
that's
just
it.
going to happen. But what the flip side of that message is if you have to send one similar to what Medibank and Optus did, which was, we had systems we knew weren't up to scratch and we didn't do anything about it. And then they got compromised and now all your data's gone. We're really sorry. I don't want to know what the financial impact of those two scenarios was, but it wasn't minimal. That they would have lost a number of members across both, members and clients across both businesses. And your dental practice is going to be no different to that. If you get a compromise, can you say, look, we were doing as much as we could. We went to an IT provider that specializes in this stuff. They advised us to do all of these things. We did those things and then we got compromised anyway. It's going to happen. Like your practice will get compromised. What's the message that you want to send at the end of it? That's really the scenario.
Put yourself at the end when you're actually communicating all this to your patients.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that is actually legislated as to what you can and can't say. And this is where the fines come in. So if you go out there and you go, oh, well, we did all this stuff and we got compromised anyway, and it turns out you weren't doing those things, then that's when fines come in. And the fines for a compromise are, I think it's up to 25% of annual revenue.
It's not a small amount.
Up to a total of, I think, $50 million. And then each director, it used to be a $900,000 fine per director of business, but it went up recently to a significant amount more than that.
Wow, there's an additional fine for the director as well.
Yeah, so they'll personally go after the people that run the business as well as the business. So when a business has a data compromise, there's good statistics on this on the OAIC as well, but it's something in excess of 60% of businesses, small businesses that have a data compromise, will be out of business within 12 months.
Oh, that's awful. That's
awful. So I look at it and I go, again, back to dentistry and IT being very similar kind of industries while being completely different to each other, is we're in a support space, right? We're here to look after people and make sure that they're okay. And a dentist is no different. So when I see this stuff happen, it genuinely hurts me. Like if somebody rings me and they tells me they've had a compromise, and we go through the whole process, and I sit there with the owner of that practice in tears at the other end of the phone, I get home and I go, oh, I'm not sleeping tonight. And that weighs. It weighs really heavy. And I think I actually really love that about most of my team, is because I will get messages from the team saying, oh, I can't believe that happened to Julie. It's like, that's the worst thing. What can we do to help her? What can we do to get her back on her feet? How can we help her get past this? That's the response that my team give. And I love that. So, we're not the fastest growing IT company in the country. And we've got no grand designs to be a big corporate, with thousands of staff or anything. I got 13 people. And it's a really nice space to be in, and we're going to continue to grow from that, but we're going to grow at a really safe rate where I can maintain that culture of care.
I love it.
Because I feel like that really, really sort of gels across with the dental industry. And
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. And, a lot of dental practices want to do the same thing, and they get in that, they get caught in that growing a little bit too big, and all of a sudden the vision around patient experience starts to fall to the side because we've got to make other things bigger and better. And, I love growth and all the things, but as my husband always says, there's benefit and drawback to everything. And having that clear vision, that clear value of care for the market that you're looking after for your business and dental, is very, very similar. We just want to make sure that the people themselves are looked after well.
Yeah.
So, not just for people who are thinking about opening up their own dental practice, but also for people who have established dental practices as well. For the group that are going to be really appealed by the event that I'll talk about at the end of the podcast, when they're contacting their accountant and their financer and their fit out people saying, okay, I want to get to these initial conversations happening around building a new dental practice, you're saying put you guys on the list as well.
Yeah, it's important that we speak to the fit out company really early. We also deal with every finance company that you possibly could think of. So we work with all of the local lenders and stuff, and we do this across Australia. So we've got very close ties with a lot of the finance companies with BOQ and Credible and Medfin and Medex and all of these other guys as well. So there's a lot of kind of collaboration that we do early, and we go, oh, look, that we've got this amount of equipment. We know that their funding only limits to here. And so we could potentially use HP's financial services division, because they have one as well, to help you get extra lending in a space where you may have reached your capital limit with your existing traditional lenders. And so getting that across early and getting approval for that really can help a practice. And it can be the difference between having to skimp on your equipment and getting the right equipment. So, that down to, doing designs. And I think, every time I show somebody, we have a software that does Wi-Fi heat mapping, and I show them what the Wi-Fi is going to be like in each room. Because they look up and they go, oh, you've got like 6 of these things up here. Do we need that many? And I go, I'll show you on the software, and I'll drag it 30 centimeters to the left, and there's a dead spot on the head of that chair.
Just when you need it.
And I go, you're standing there with your Medit scanner. So, for me, it's that early engagement's really important for us to be able to collaborate with everybody else as well, because then we can work with the vendor that's putting in the X-rays to make sure that they've got the right equipment in the back end, that the databases get installed in the right space on the right devices. Some equipment vendors have a bad habit of just installing databases on whichever computer they like, and that's not always the safest way to do it. So, having that kind of that guidance from the technical perspective from a really early phase can make all of the difference in whether day one is a success or day one is a stress.
Yeah. And what about established practices? They've been around forever. They quite possibly do have different stages of technology being implemented into their practice over a various number of years. You can come in, sort things out, and be the, for all of these practices, be the go-to person. So with established practices, what does that look like?
You'll love this one, because I used an analogy today with one of my staff, Rachel, and she was like, "Oh, I love that. I'm using that." Is that she was talking about there was another one of a company that we were talking to, and they said, "Oh, but this IT guy down the street is just going to do our stuff." And I go, "Yeah, but you wouldn't hire a hygienist to do an extraction, would you? Like, that's just, he's not the right person to do that job." And we are realistically, we're more like the prosthodontists of the IT world. Is we specialize very heavily in one specific space, and this is all that we do. So we come in a lot of the time to existing practices. It's about 50% of our new business comes from existing, and 50% comes from new builds. So it's kind of it's a really solid mix. But the existing ones, quite often, there's been a mix of IT providers that have been in there over a number of years. There's a whole bunch of equipment that, somebody's decided, a Netgear switch, that's a great thing. I'll put that in here. And there's no cloud management of it. And then, as things have got more complex, those extra management pieces have become really crucial. And so, we quite often take over from an existing IT provider that maybe either just wasn't meeting their requirements in terms of, service. I think our average call answer time is less than 12 seconds onto
Very
our service desk. Yeah, and that's a hard one to maintain too.
Yeah.
We also send out a survey at the end of each ticket that's, gold star, green, yellow, red face. And I'd say the majority of our clients know that if you press anything that's not a gold star, you're getting a phone call.
Love it.
To the point, like somebody put in the other day, they put in a yellow face and they had a genuine concern. And I always say to people, I'm like, I want to see more yellow, red. Like, that's the feedback we want. Yeah. If everything is gold stars, everybody thinks everything's great. And that's just not the case. There's going to be times it's a human service desk. People are going to miss things. Things aren't going to get done exactly the way you wanted because you've asked us to do something, but you didn't realize that you needed something else. Yeah. That kind of stuff happens. But we got a yellow face and she said, "Hey, you don't need to call me, but," and then listed what her issue was. And we have that published to our website, the feedback channel, for 90 days worth of feedback chat. I don't filter it. Goes straight out to the website.
That's great.
And you can find it. And I think we're at something like a 98% approval rating on our thing. So that's 98% gold stars. But again, I see that as it's a skewed metric. Is people quite often are happy just to hit the gold star and be like, yep, cool, gold star.
Yeah.
But they're worried, if I press red face, I don't want to upset anybody. And I go, my team learn more from somebody pressing the red or the yellow than they do from anything else. So I want you to press it. You're not happy, you press it. We can improve based off that. And I've always viewed everything in my life in this way, is that you don't learn from your successes, you learn from your failures. And I think you really need to scrape a few knees to get better.
Oh, you're so spot on with that. And I remember listening to a podcast episode on something or other years ago, and they said, yeah, as a manager or as a business owner, hearing positive feedback means nothing.
Yeah.
Receiving no feedback is concerning, and receiving bad feedback is golden.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. 100%.
So it goes down that path, and we learn. That's how we become better from failure.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's it. Is that, when we first got involved in the dental space, none of the vendors would talk to us. Right. So like we had a problem with Sodexis, and you'd call Dentsply and they'd be like, nah. They just wouldn't help you. And Henry Schein were the same, and everybody was the same. And it took us just working with dental practices and just literally smacking our head against a wall, trying to figure out how this thing actually worked, how it configured, how it got to this point. And it was just slowly, relationship by relationship, that we built that up. It's, Dentsply is probably the longest standing relationship that we've got in terms of partnerships. And it was an ex-state sales manager in Victoria that I was called into a job that he'd had a problem with his x-ray. And by the time he got there, we'd already found the problem and fixed it. And so when I first spoke to this guy, it was, hey, just letting you know, it's already resolved. The x-rays work, like CBCT is working fine now. It was a 10-minute take. So they'd press the button and it'd take 10 minutes to
take the image. Oh.
Yeah. So it was really bad. And it'd been going on for 6 months. And we got called in, and then it was like, within a week we'd gone in there, we'd found, and it was just one of the ports in the wall was just some cheap Chinese port, and it wasn't going at the right speed. And that was it. And so we had someone come out and replace that. It cost $80, and all of a sudden 30 seconds.
Yeah. And I think this is what you're highlighting. You're highlighting, get the experts involved in this, responsible for this aspect of the business, because it will be quicker and cheaper and less complicated, and back to operations again as normal, keeping in mind that all of the way we do things as dental practices relates to the patient as a level of professionalism. Are they on top of things or are they not? Everything seems chaotic. There was a recent client mentioned about their dental software kept spitting out SMSs constantly to their patients. You're due for a recall 6 times in one day. And they said the biggest concern we've got is how we're appearing to our patients, and they were absolutely right. Everything that we do, every time we say, oh, things aren't working 100%, but just wait with us, bear with us for a moment, we're going to see if we can fix it. That all erodes trust that little bit.
Yeah.
And so it does come back to that. But get the experts in, because then it's not as painful. And it does make me think about with you, some of the things that you're speaking about. I go into dental surgeries as a consultant and say, we've got to get great systems for your recall strategy, great marketing systems, great team communication system, leadership, all the things. And I really encourage, I'm going to start encouraging as well, new clients, get an IT system in place. Yeah. So when something doesn't work well, when something, God forbid, breaks down, when you've had a data breach, or whenever anything like that happens, you've got a system to fall back on.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things is that, I've been into practices where they go, we've been using the same guy for 25 years. I go, yeah, but all the licenses on your servers are illegal. Like they've put in dodgy licenses there, and they've done, and that's like, I don't, it's really hard for me because I don't win business by scaring people away from existing providers. I'm friends with some of my biggest competitors, and I'm not friends with other ones. And I think that's really, I actually really think that's healthy in a space, is that, a good amount of competitiveness in an industry makes it better. Yeah. But the average guy that's from down the road, that's a 1 or 2 man IT shop that doesn't really know what's going on inside your practice, he's doing a lot more harm than. And your staff are spending 5-10 hours a month on the phone with high caps and with Centaur and with other people trying to get issues resolved that you could have gone to an IT company and had them resolve. So
in a flash. Oh, and
yeah,
sometimes not in a flash, but certainly far quicker than people whose expertise doesn't lie in this area, but they're the receptionist, the dental assistant, the dentist, the associate dentist, the hygienist. None of them are going to know the amount of information about the IT and be able to manage interruptions the way you guys can.
yeah. And then I think as well, you got to watch yourself when it comes down. And maybe I'm just doing a public service announcement here, but I've seen other IT companies out there that they'll look like they're really cheap on paper. Like we all go down to what's called a per seat cost. That's a standardized term in our industry, and it's per person or per device. And there is a charge associated to that on a monthly basis, and that's how we work out how much a practice has to pay for support and for cybersecurity and all the other bits and pieces. Now, I've seen people out there who charge literally half what we charge. But what they're relying on is to then come in and sell you a whole bunch of computers, and then they'll mark all of those up at 30, 40, 50%. So every time you need a piece of hardware, or every time there's a call out, or if there's a phone call at 2 minutes past 5, that's $200. And there's all this stuff. And, I was talking to one of my clients on the weekend. She rang me Saturday morning, and I was away on holiday with my family, but I saw the phone ring and I was like, oh, yeah, it's all right. I was like, how you going? And she goes, yeah, good. Just really quickly. And she's like, and very new to us. She goes, oh, I just first of all, I didn't ring the support line because I wasn't sure if I was going to get charged, but I've got a problem. And what do I do? And I was like, is it just this? And she goes, yeah. And I was like, hang on, let me get my laptop. And I got my laptop out and I set it up in my caravan. And I was just like, boop, boop, boop. All right, cool. Is that working? And she goes, yeah. And I was like, yeah, sweet. She goes, is there going to be a charge? I'm like, nah, it's no charge for that. And I'm like, it's in our contracts that we charge for those weekend pieces and the out of hours pieces. But I just go, there's got to be a level of common sense as well.
Yeah, nice.
And, if we look after the people that, we do this work for, is in the long run, they're going to benefit and it's going to look after us. And it's going to mean that I get to employ more people and more families get fed. I've got a staff member of mine. She works from our Melbourne office in Docklands now, but she's originally from Manila. And she started working for me, would have been 7 years ago next month. And in her initial interview with us, I said, where are you in 5 years? Like, what's the story for Tanya? And Tanya says, oh, I just want to still be doing work for you. And I was like, okay.
You're hired.
Now, and I'm trying to refrain myself. I'm very liberal with my wording sometimes, and I'm not going to swear on your podcast, but I was like.
You can swear.
I was like.
I think they're all grown-ups out there.
I was like, you just cut the shit, right? Where are you actually in 5 years? Like, what's the dream for you? And she was like, I'd be living in Australia and still working for you. And I was like, at the time, it was me and one other guy. And I was like, don't know if I could do that. But I was like, okay, no, fair enough. And 4 years, 11 months, and I think 20 days into her employment, she landed in Australia. We sponsored her and she's now here and she lives about a 5-minute drive to my right. Just around the corner from me. And we moved her here with her partner and her 2 boys. And, I can't explain how expensive it is to do this whole process, right? She's earned it. She's absolutely earned it. And she works her absolute heart out for us and for the clients that we have. So I have absolutely no regrets in doing what we've done. But I go, because I had a friend of mine ask me, well, why'd you do it? You now have to pay that person like 3 times the salary. There's all of this other stuff. You've paid for all of the lawyers and all the other bits and pieces. And, there's to sponsor somebody and actually get them to permanent residency stage, it's probably about $50,000 worth of fees and lawyers and government stuff. And, we're a pay to enter country. And so I was explaining to a friend of mine that is not a business owner. And I was just like, there are a certain number of lives that you will get to change in your lifetime. Mm. And I think it's remiss of you to ignore the opportunity to do so.
That's good. That's good. Oh, that line is going to stay with me for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah. I
think this is where small business allows that to happen more easily. It's when you start to scale and grow that maybe those elements do kind of weed out, or because it can't accommodate for that anymore.
I think so. I think there's a certain amount of flexibility. Everybody says, small businesses are agile. And I go, mine feels less and less agile every time I bring a new person on.
Yeah.
Because now it's like, if I want to change a piece of software, I don't have to get 3 people on board. I have to get 13. And that can be really difficult. And the same thing happens in a dental practice, but typically your starting point, you can't start from the spare bedroom of your house with $0 and zero capital and zero investment. That's what I did. I started with zero clients, zero anything. And like my first 2 years, I don't think I paid myself a salary. And I made business cards and I walked door to door. I just went into random businesses. I was like, hey, my name's Mike. I do IT. You ever have a problem? Give me a call. Here's my card.
Great.
But you can't do that as a dentist. And you're kind of starting off on this really, like you start with $1 million in debt when you're opening a new practice, and you've got 3, 4, 5 staff that might start with you on day one, and there's all of this stuff. And I think what people don't talk about is the mental impact of running a practice. It is hard. It's stressful. It's you'll get to payday and you're like, oh man, I don't know that we're making pays, or maybe mine gets skipped. I haven't skipped one of my pay runs in a very long time, but there was a long period of time where I'd get to payday and I'd be like, right, well, I can pay the staff.
Yeah, can't pay myself.
Can't pay myself, but I can pay the staff.
But you're right, it is overwhelming, and it does require a strong mindset, and it requires us to be very active in applying carefully laid meaning to everything that's going on around us, because it can get too much.
Yeah. And I think I heard once upon a time, I heard somebody say, you are the middle of the 5 people who are most common in your world, right? You are the midpoint of those 5 people. So you need to surround yourself with people who are going to bring you up, right? People who are positive, people who are going to help you and elevate you, and people who are high performers. If you surround yourself with high performing people, you are going to be a high performing person, because they won't put up with you if you're not.
Yeah.
Right. So it's going to force you to be better than you are. And
that's right.
I love that.
And you need people around you. You can't afford to have people around you saying, oh my God, that does sound too hard. Oh, you must be so overwhelmed. We can, with our own self-talks, doing that enough, get different perspectives coming in, more powerful perspectives, ones that say this is not the end of the world. No one's dying. Move through this difficulty. You'll be better and stronger by the next day. That sort of
100%.
Yeah. But we are, and that is a wonderful saying, and it makes us responsible for who we are surrounding ourselves with.
Yeah, and I think it draws on me a little bit more as well. I'm the middle child of 12. I've got 7 sisters, 4 brothers, and 7 parents, and it's just this mess of a family. And I think just being the middle of that kind of chaos, it really just drove me to I always wanted to be better than everybody at everything. Like whenever I did something, I was like, yeah, I used to play soccer when I was younger. Up until about a year and a half ago, I broke my tailbone, and that was the end of that for me. Yeah. But I'd be playing a game, we'd be 5 goals down with 60 seconds left, and I'd be sprinting up the other end. I'm like, I just want to get a goal. I just want to put it at the back of the net. You know what I mean? Like I just want to keep going, and that really is sort of something that's translated across to my business life as well. Is when I see a competitor out there who's doing something better than me, I'm like, great. How are they doing it better than me? And now how can we do it better than them?
Yeah.
Because there's always, it doesn't matter what way you do it, right? If you're running a dental practice, there are going to be dentists who have better recall, that have better chairside manner, that have a better support staff, that have a better practice manager. There is going to be people around you and in your suburb that do things better than you do. And I think what a lot of people focus on when they first open up, they're like, oh, these people are just doing that better than us. Oh, that sucks. And I go, but how are they doing it better than you? And then how can you take that and be better than them?
Yeah.
Right. Use that as a stepping point and go, well, this is now what I could do to improve ourselves as a business and as a practitioner and as a clinician and everything else. How can I do this better than everybody else does it? Because that, for me, some of the practices I work with, one of the guys that really comes to mind is Dr. Gamaverdian. He's Dental Lounge up in Sydney. Mm-hmm. And he is just one of the best operators I've ever seen in a dental practice. He's so driven, so focused. And then I look on my socials and I'm like, but he's on 75 videos today. Like how, I don't understand. And I spoke to him about it once and he was like, oh, I just, the team will come and grab me, but he's got to make time for that. He's got to do it. He's got to be willing to put in the effort for that. And I think that's what really separates the operators like him apart from everybody else is he goes, well, here's what we could do to elevate ourselves above everyone else around us. So let's do that. Let's get ourselves to that point so that we can just be better.
Yeah. Yeah. What's that saying? Don't wish you were, I don't know, something or other. Just wish you were better. Just be better. Be better. Be better than yesterday. And look at the evidence around you. And I love what you're talking about. Don't look at what your competition is doing and compare yourself to that to make yourself feel bad. Look at what your competition is doing so you can see what the next step forward is.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what we've done as a business as well, is I've looked at it and I've gone, we've got some competitors are out there who are smaller than us now. There's some that are bigger than us. There's some that are substantially bigger than us. And I talked to a guy called AJ who runs Mercury IT up in the Gold Coast. And this guy is just a great operator. He is an excellent business owner. He cares about the people he works with. I don't think we've ever traded a practice, either direction. And he does a lot in the dental space. And I look at him and the way that he's run his business and where he's got to. And I'll call him probably once a month. I'll get on the phone with him. We'll spend a couple of hours on the phone and I'll talk to him and I'll be like, hey, look, here's where I'm at. This is what I'm doing. This is my net profit margin right now. This is where I'm going to go to. Like, I'm kind of stuck on this bit though. Like, what can I do? And he just goes, yeah, cool. Yeah, do this. This is what we can do. Do you want me to introduce you to some people? I'll introduce you to these people and they'll help you through that. And, that for me, and I love that too. I do this through the sales process. When someone comes and they talk to us, I run them through the whole sales process and I go, you know what, if you pick another IT company, that's okay. Is I'm still going to be here 6 months, 12 months, 24 months from now when you realize that they weren't a good fit. But I'm happy to run through their solution and the devices they're putting in and everything and just tell you things that might catch you out here. And there's things that you're not going to realize. They put in this specific firewall and that firewall has yearly licensing. And that's an extra $1,000 a year you have to pay that you weren't even thinking about. There's little things like that you're not going to see. And I try to keep as much of what we do really open. I have clients on a regular basis. Someone will talk to me about what we're doing in terms of the solution that we provide. And they're like, oh, it's a bit expensive. And I go, okay, let me jump in with me. I'll share my screen. Here you go. This is the back end of my system. This is what we're buying it for. This is what we're selling it to you for. And majority of the time we're sitting at around a 15% margin on hardware. It's enough for it to be worth it for me, but hardware is not our game. So 15% kind of makes sense to us to, we get that and that's great. And I think, if more people were more open about what their actual margins were, is there'd be a lot less kind of negativity around a lot of that kind of stuff.
Well, you'd have the transparency, and transparency is trust building.
That's exactly
as well.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
And what we're talking about with your business is building that trusting relationship, that trusted expert in the area that you can just rely upon to fill that gap within your business.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think it's, I would say 9 out of 10, probably actually higher number than that. But the majority of new practice owners that I talk to, I go, okay, do you know how to read your P&L? Do you know what a cash summary is? Do you know how to review your balance sheet? And they go, no. And I go, right, that's because you're not a clinician anymore. You're a business owner now. And you need to understand those. And it took me a really long time to learn that stuff too. I ran a business for a long time and I was like,
but you can't worry about it.
I don't even know that I had a full-time accountant back then. I was doing all the bookwork myself and I still didn't know what any of it meant. So I actually don't know how we got to this point, but I kind of look at that and I go, there's a new skill set you have to learn. And I think you should really go away and do that. And I've been to a couple of events with Prime Practice where they talk about, practice ownership and chair values and profit margins and all this kind of stuff. And I've been to them before and seen, glazed over eyes and people just being like, oh, I don't know. And I know I should know this, but I'm not interested. Yeah. If you want to know, if you want to own a practice, get interested.
Yeah.
That's really important.
Just get super curious. And it is about bringing in as much data from different sources as possible. So you can then start getting a sense of where you're supposed to be and what direction you want to take the business in and the benefits and drawbacks of whatever decisions you end up making. So it is a brand new world. And I know that when I bought my practice in 2003, I didn't know anything about running a business, but it is such a university degree to go through it.
Yep.
And a lot of dentists complain, oh, we didn't learn anything about this in dental school. But you know what? That was because it was dental school. If you want to learn about
Yeah.
business, do an
You go to business
MBA.
school. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
But recognize that there's a whole bunch you're going to feel incompetent about, of course, and you will get less and less incompetent as time goes on. You will build skills and confidence and competency in all these things. And if you actually plotted the amount of stuff that you learn on a linear chart, you would be amazed at how much you are absorbing and growing in that space. When we're in it day to day, we can't sometimes get a sense of how much we are progressing, but that progressive journey is worth it. And it is absolutely powerful. And you are never as dumb as we are right now. Tomorrow we are smarter, as long as we
Yeah.
embrace the journey.
I think that's it. And I think there's a real beauty to ignorance sometimes is realizing, and if you've never seen it before, go look up what the Dunning-Kruger effect is.
Yeah.
And for most people, when I first talked to them about it, I'm like, it's great. You start your practice and you're up here, and then all of a sudden it's like, and you just go, oh crap! I thought I knew more than this. And I think there's a beautifulness to the bottom of that arc of when you get right down there and you're like, I know nothing. And there's two people, and I think some people just plateau there, and they're just like, I just don't ever want to learn it, and that's where they stay. And some of them are successful at it, some of them aren't, but you're not giving yourself a chance. You're really relying on fate at that point. But there's the other ones that go, oh, well, I could go out and I could learn. I could go do a Prime event. I could go get some training with Dr. Tiv. I could, there's all of these different things that I could do.
Yeah.
And I think those are what separate the real slick operators and the ones that create really nice practices to the ones that really struggle.
Yeah, I agree. And this event that we've got coming up on the Wednesday, 18th of March here in Melbourne, it's at Mulgrave Country Club in Willis Hill. So it's very much a Melbourne event, but it is going to have a panel of 9 experts, and our sponsors will be there as well. And it will be a field of questions being bombarded at them. And so if anybody is out there looking to buy their own practice or intrigued about, if they're still within the first few years of owning a practice and they're intrigued about, hammering these experts with questions, we really do encourage people to come along. It's going to be a fantastic event. There'll be food and nibbles and drinks there and all the things. You'll be treated beautifully, but it's going to be one of the most enlightening events. It's going to be a 3-hour one, 6:30 to 9:30. We make sure we pack as many questions in there as possible. And again, it's going to be great to have you on. It is great having you on board. It's great to have all these other experts on board as well. And I can see this being a kind of a regular thing that gets rolled out because, as you say, we're all jumping in ignorant at the very start. I certainly jumped into my dental practice ownership journey ignorant at the start. And if I'd known everything, I may not have made the jump. So bless the ignorance because it got me down the path.
That's it. There's something beautiful about just jumping off and figuring out how to build the parachute on the way down, right?
Having faith in yourself. I don't know what it looks like, but I'm sure I'll be able to muddle through it.
That's it.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. You're an absolute legend. Your website is 32byte.com.au. That's 32byte.com.au. If you've got any IT in your surgery, which means every practice in Australia needs to contact you and figure out what the next step is to make sure that they've got this side of it systematized beautifully. Thank you so much for being so detailed in your description of how important you are.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciated it.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mike. If you enjoyed this podcast, then I encourage you to head over to Ameena and my website, dentalbusinessmastery.com.au. You will find all the information that you need if you would like to gain our assistance in helping you and your team achieve great success. If you would like to find out more, you can also email us directly at info@dentalbusinessmastery.com.au. Thanks so much for listening.